So, hello everybody. I'm the managing director of Donostia Cultura, the organization in charge of the culture of Donostia San Sebastián, and on behalf of the San Sebastián City Council, I want to welcome all of you. That's very impressive, having all of you here. And we want to give a warm welcome to those people who came from Palestine and from Ukraine as well, for the difficulties that So thank you very much for being here, and we hope and wish that you may have a great stay here and you will enjoy sharing your experience, your knowledge, your ideas, and getting a little bit the flavor of the Basque country, our country. So first of all, Arratsaldeon, buenas tardes, good evening to everybody, and Ongi etorri, which means welcome in Basque. And before to start, I want to point out one idea in the cultural field. Don't forget who you are working for. So I have a big experience. I'm getting old, so I know that you are very young, all of you, and this atelier is for young people. But don't forget the public. So in my experience, I would say that sometimes managers, even journalists, creators, politicians, they work for themselves and they don't keep in mind that they have to work for the public. So that will be my advice. So thanks for coming here, and dear Inge,
thank you so much, Jaime. So welcome again, everybody, and also people who joined us just now for this opening keynote panel of the next 7 days. So we are gathering here with 47 participants, festival leaders, young festival leaders from more than 35 countries. And as Jaime said, like also people coming from quite challenged regions today, like Argentina, DRC, Palestine, Ukraine. We are super happy that Lorenzo made this happen. So thank you, Norca. Thank you, Lorenzo. Thank you, Marie-José. Thank you, all the people who have realized this together with us. Special, very, very special thanks to the team also of the Festival Academy, to Mar, to Fabiola, to Anna, to Mette. And thanks to some of our supporters, like Erasmus Plus, like ACID, for supporting participants, Goethe, El Mauret, who made it possible for many people to be in the room today. Because it's really about who is in the room and whose stories are being told. And more than ever, it seems essential, crucial, urgent that we are here, but also an incredible privilege, you know, that we are meeting here, that we made it here, that we got our visa, that we made our travel. We are seeing strikes. We are witnessing a lot of things today that might make it very challenging. We don't know where we are in a couple of months and if this mobility is possible, so never to take it for granted and to be aware of the space that we are in the next 7 days, to reflect on the role of arts and festivals and what we can mean within our societies, within our villages, within our regions, and within the world. So let's start maybe by facing reality. It seems like we've lost or we are losing on the level of more democracy, on the level of human rights, on the level of climate, on the level of women's rights, black lives, transgender. We are facing wars, genocide, rising authoritarianism, or let's call it fascism, that is kind of appearing again. We find ourselves, and I think this is interesting to mention, in a country, Spain, that until the 80s had a dictator, Franco, ruling this place. So it's quite a young democracy. So I feel also that it's very special that we have the opportunity to kind of ask ourselves these questions within this context today. So there are some questions that seem crucial. What does democracy mean? You know, like when we talk about storytelling or our stories, what is the level of clarity that we need? And maybe the level of clarity of the words that we are using as democracy, as justice, as peace. Why do people vote for these regimes? Because we focus often on the person or the, you know, like I don't want to call names or something, but it's actually all those people who voted for them. And we are running festivals. We are connected to people, to civil society. So what can our impact be on this? What are the stories that need to be told? What does curation, which comes from the Latin word curare, which comes from to care, to cure, mean within these contexts? So for me, a question is, why do we believe what we believe? Why do we choose what we choose? And what can our impact be on this? Festivals are spaces for expression, you know, like at a point, and also the Festival Academy is kind of offering this space, I think, at a time that we feel that spaces for critical reflection are closing in on us. We are here. So this is now, this is here, this is today, and we have an opportunity. And festivals are places that offer this opportunity also to civil society, to people who live in our villages, cities, regions, in our world again. So what can we change? What can we impact, even if we feel overwhelmed, scared, hopeless, like it feels like whatever we will do will not make a difference? The question is like, can we stay engaged? Can we stay vocal about what matters to us, even if there's rising censorship? And sometimes it only needs one person. And if that person needs to be you, it might have to be you. There's Margaret Mead who said, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. And we are not a small group. We are, if you think about the audiences that we represent, if you think about the community that you will become part of, the 1,400 people from more than 100 countries, we are talking about a potential audience outreach of millions of people. So let's also be aware of that. So I want to turn with these words to this panel who is all going to solve this for us. And this is not like, the point of this conversation is a conversation. Because also these people are going through this time and we are going through it, we are trying to understand it. We don't have the answers. We are still processing a lot of rapid changes, geopolitical shifts that are happening currently in the world that are affecting many of us and some much more than others. So the question for the panel is, and I want to kind of look at my paper to kind of formulate it clearly, what I said. So amid these geopolitical shifts we are facing, what may be the positive takeaways, if any, or at least some of the key learnings that we are getting out of this? What do we care about? What do we love? What truly matters? What is meaningful to us? And what can we do about the things we care about from our respective spaces, places, festivals, or as human beings in this world? So where are you now? Because you all come from very different, unique contexts. So also, I'm not going to give a CV or an introduction of you, but I suggest that you introduce yourself also through your organizations and what you are doing. And to contextualize that in what do you believe that would be meaningful to do today within the context that we are living, and where to put our energy, time, and focus. So the world and the word is all yours.
I'm assuming you are saying I should be the one to go first. I think we did the introductions. My name is Princess. I'm originally from Zimbabwe, but I work and live in South Africa at the moment. I don't know where I'm going to be in the next year or two. So I don't think we are losing or we've lost. I think that's where I'm standing right now. I feel like it's the moment of the awakening. I think whatever we are seeing now has been under the pipes, and I feel like it's even better to deal with a devil that you actually know. Because I don't think the position, in particular, we all have panic over what's happening in the United States. Let's say it. Let's face it. But I think the ideas or the thoughts or the prejudices that we're seeing now being given space in the media or mainstream media have always been there. They're just now sort of like coming to light. So I think it's better to deal with the devil you know and the issues that you know, which is why I think yesterday when we were talking, I said political correctness for me has been sort of like a dangerous thing, because a lot of people have harbored all these ill thoughts and opinions about people and humanity, but they just haven't said them openly, which is difficult to navigate in a system where you think you're accepted, but you're actually not accepted and you're not wanted and you're not needed. But when you're dealing with a system which you know that does not want you to exist and has no care for you, then you know how to strategize and deal with that enemy. So I think it's that moment, it's an awakening moment. And because we're being awakened to the truth that the people we exist with have problems with other people living on this earth. So even the bashing of the transgender people, we've always known that there is this thing. Even spaces that have been called heavens for humanity and democracies are not so democratic. We are seeing this now, but we've always, I think, in a way, somewhat been having these conversations in the global south, that we do not necessarily think that spaces that are otherwise called safe are necessarily safe. And so I think this truth for me is an awakening that we can strategize around to say, okay, we know the enemy, so how do we beat the enemy to their game? Rather than smiling and giggling with people that do not actually want you to exist, and you don't know how to strategize with that, because a person who's disguising as a friend can easily poison you and you won't know. So I think it's a moment of truth and it's a moment of an awakening, and we haven't lost, but we'll re-strategize knowing fully well what we're against. So those are my first 2 cents.
Okay, hi everyone. Nice to see this full of people. My name is Priscila Santana. I'm a curator in a festival in New York City. It's one of the largest outdoor free festival in New York City. We do more than 50 shows. We have like 3 months festivals. It's a long festival that we work the whole year to put it together. And it's one of my passion because it's a free festival. We are talking about bringing for the community culture, and culture is one of the most essential things that we need, especially in moments like this. So when we talk about democracy, we are thinking something really new, right? Like, I'm from Brazil, and in Brazil, in the 60s, which was when my mom was born, we were having dictatorship, right? So like all the cultural ways and government was controlled by the military. and we didn't have any freedom and any liberty. That was like 10 years, 15, almost 15 years later that Brazil started to be like a democracy again, which means that this is like less than 50 years. US is not the difference. Like in the 60s, I could not vote in the US, right? And in the 60s, someone that looks like me could not go in a lot of spaces in the US. So democracy is also a really young field and mindsets for the US. So we are talking about a space where like we are talking about liberty and freedom, where everybody's trying to figure out what that means. So including us, right? Because we are thinking about the government, but we are also part of that. So we cannot just put on them. So what we are facing right now in the US, in a lot of different countries, is a reality that like we need better ways to thinking of democracy in better ways to really establish what democracy is and how we can put our voices there, how we can really be seen and be heard. But this requires active participation in all levels. So one concept that is from this really amazing philosopher from Brazil, she works with cultural citizenship, which is basically the rights for the culture. Culture is a right. It shouldn't be seen as an entertainment. It shouldn't be seen. That's kind of obvious in this place to say, but it's not obvious when we go outside of here, right? Like culture is a right. Who are we without culture? That is no we. That is, especially when you go outside, when you go abroad, you really have a sense who you are based on your culture, right? Of your identity. What is your music? What is your food? What is the architecture where you live? Look, those are the symbols, what makes a culture. And that's what unites people. So like when we do like the Brazilian Day, when we do the French Day, when we do the Greek Day, when we do like all those different like cultures and all those different like identities, it is not just about music. It is not just about the art form. We are bringing to the community the truth a way of expression. And you can see this through joy, but also like how they identify themselves. So thinking about ways of like, we are always scared what is happening in the US right now, right? So like I would not go exactly in that direction. But one good way of what is, good way is not a better way to say, but one way to see that is that US, for good or bad, the US government, it is not the main funding source for the culture in the US. For good, in this case, right now, for good, right? Because if it was not, oh God, but for good, it's just 7% of the total budget of the nonprofits in the US are based on the government source. And so the US also does not have a Minister of Culture, which is a shame. And historically, a couple scholars says that this is based on the idea that what is culture? When you think US, what is, okay, I will not go too long, but like, when you think in the culture of the US, right? You think about jazz, you think about blues, you think about hip hop, you think about all those genres, and what all of them has in common? Yes. So all of them come from the same source. The US until the 60s would not give those folks rights to do anything. So like one of the scholars says, a couple of them say, that like the US didn't primarily create a Minister of Culture because they didn't want to source those kind of culture. And then they created the National Endowment for the Arts, which is the primary source of funding in the US. And at the beginning, right now it's different, but at the beginning they was just funding like more of the classical art. So they were primarily funding not the performing arts, not the right say, classical music, opera. So that's the beginning of National Endowment for the Arts, which right now is a little different, but that's how it was at the beginning. So like you cannot say that those things are not related with why US does not fund. And for the good right now, we have a lot of sources. The festival that I curate, our main sources are corporates, individual sponsors from different sources, but it's not the government. And this for us is really good. So I'll pass the mic because I could be here talking forever because, it's UX, yeah.
Thank you. maybe to start, these are certainly not answers, but more personal, two personal reflections and two more public reflections. First of all, I think in times like these, and for me personally, I think it's important to be mindful about what you let into your mind. And so I've been trying to, and when I say this, this is not meant to be like do as I say or anything like that, but I think it's important to share these kinds of ways of dealing with the current media environment. So I reverted back to some old practices, partly inspired by the Brian Eno documentary, which I saw, and he apparently does this. So I don't read the news before noon. I try to do some output work before I let the input in. So I don't know what the latest shit show was yesterday, right now. I didn't read the news today. And of course, it's a little hard. It makes you feel maybe out of touch or disconnected. But I've even tried to go to a weekly cycle where I read the news on Thursdays and Fridays. And of course, I'm in a relationship and I have friends who message me, but I try to signal to them too that I'm not interested in this right now. I'll think about this a bit later, because that is part of the sort of authoritarian populist playbook. You flood the zone and you make it almost impossible to have other thoughts. So that's one thing, the kind of be mindful of the input. The second thing has to do with personal motivation to getting into curation and working on Helsinki Festival. It's one reason I actually thought to take this role of taking care of this large Nordic multi-arts festival, is that I do believe that in the current media environment, there are very few social happenings or events that synchronize our attention, meaning that we pay attention to the same thing at the same time. The media environment is so fragmented, and this is before any authoritarian populist playbook stuff. It's just very fragmented. That has to do with social media, other fragmentation. So it's very rare that you have, for example, 1,000 people pay attention to the same thing quietly, thinking about it for an hour, for example. Or we started our last festival in August with a performance by 147 basses at the Senate Square. It's kind of a crazy idea, but 26,000 people, quiet for 24 minutes. And this was the night of the arts, when it's like crazy carnival, but then after that, the party started. And I think this has a value, that you can build this kind of synchronized attention. And I think this problem, the need to address this problem is getting more important given this flooding the zone and the media environment. So those are two kind of personal things. That's why I took on the job, but because I do think it can have that impact. And then that's the third point, impact, which is a word we'll be, I think, talking about quite a bit this week. And so what is oftentimes in the festival context, when you're talking to public funders or private funders, it can very quickly be kind of this numbers theater, or you invent metrics and you say, I don't mean that we're trying to mislead anyone, but we are doing it for the funding community or someone else to show that we are just as important as some other cultural activity. But I think here, to me, it's more important that it's like a personal reflection, is what is the change I want to make with the curation activities that I'm able to do and the resources I'm able to muster. And not trying to convince anyone to fund. I realize that's a reality. We all live with that. But it's more of this personal reflection on meaningfulness, a little bit what I alluded to just before the break. And related to this, and this is something that may not be a common perspective, and I got a lot of criticism from my colleagues at the festival, the Helsinki Events Foundation, for saying this. A very dear friend of mine, Reid Hoffman, started a company called LinkedIn, which is one of the only social medias where it's okay to still be and not be crooked or something. And he has often said to me that, Marco, give me the choice between a good product and good distribution. I'll take distribution any day. And what he means by that is, and particularly with digital experiences and goods, unless you have a way to reach people and improve the product, it doesn't matter that your product is perfect, because no one will get it and it won't get better and it won't survive. Now, this is a point of view, but I'd like to say at the festival office, give me the choice between good art and good distribution. I'll take distribution any day. And there's Marco. You can't say that. Art has a value in and of itself. But I do feel that a key factor in impact, and I'm not talking about scale, bigness, and 26,000 people. That's not the point. But is thinking as critically about distribution and how you reach people as you do what the performance is and the curation. And this is hard in this environment because the main way we're supposed to reach people are through platforms that are effectively weapons today. So I think social media should be classed alongside, they're like gambling sites and defense industry from an investment point of view. They similarly cause harm and addiction and other things. And now that people are lined up with mainly now North American power, and this is not a political discussion about them, but we can't really use it. I tried to convince my team to jump off all of the social media, and we just couldn't do it. Finland is very metacentric, and they said, like, where are we going to? And I realized you can't jump off a cliff without knowing where the last, where the rope is or where the. But we grew direct emails. This is a small thing, but from 5,000 to 25,000 during the term. I just said, we need a way to talk to people, which is not structured around these. And I think this topic is sometimes dismissed as marketing, or it's not meant to be, it's not serious enough. But I think it's actually where most of the impact comes from, the ability to speak to communities and then take it forward. No answers, as said, but some thoughts. Next.
Hard to follow up on that. Hi, my name is Mac. I'm from the Philippines. Maybe I just start by answering Inge's prompt, what is meaningful for us? For me, I think of the question, what kinds of kisses are appropriate for the end of the world? I ask this because in my region, in Southeast Asia, there's a huge scam industry that's really blowing up right now. Lots of scam hubs growing in Cambodia, Thailand, Philippines, Myanmar. Just last week, there was a raid of 400 foreigners in a scam hub in Manila that included nationals from, Southeast Asia, even Madagascar. And I think about how the US empire is sort of like now synonymous with big tech. And a lot of, government priorities, including our current president, is what they call the digital transformation. And it's so, interesting to live in a time in what the Palestinian scholar Ali Muslik calls like the Marshall media ecology, which is sort of similar to how you describe social media now. And I think a lot of my motivation and thinking is sort of like, looking at what we're up against, which is sort of this semiotic war, this war on our body and our minds. And how do we sort of program against this sort of like cultural software of militarism, imperialism, colonialism, and capitalism, while we're going through this sort of digital transformation campaign, the hype of artificial intelligence under this like sort of permanent state of democracy. And at the same time, I think about the role that us cultural producers have, also complicit in sort of oiling the wheels of empire and sustaining business as usual. And that's why there's a serious sort of need to look at what the stakes are and what we're up against. What's so inspiring about this atelier is also just the concept of like a festival, which I think I've been thinking about it, yeah, especially with like Elon Musk now, the part of the US government, sort of like building their own empire world computer, is how festivals could also serve as like alternative social media platforms where we are able to sort of write our own codes of conduct, write our own sort of ways of relating to one another, without also losing sight of things that are so obvious when it comes to the reasons behind the rise of fascism, which is really like a lack of meeting the needs of people, which are livable wages, parks, people are lonely, these very basic needs that are consistently not met. And just thinking about how in the arts, we also run from this like culture of like generosity that I'm wondering like at what point is the limitation of endless generosity when even most of the artists we know also cannot meet their basic living needs. And so this is the project of what I propose, which is sort of like seizing the means of seduction in a time where the attention economy is relentless and any activity that we do, artists as content producers, for example, become value for big tech, and criticism becomes sort of like devalued or irrelevant, or contributing to the very flows of circulation of data, maintaining these platforms. And so, what kinds of kisses are appropriate for the end of the world?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to talk about the social media the aspect that you talked about, which is like how to use social media to make an impact in culture and in art. And I mean, we have this Radio Al-Hara, which is heavily based on social media. It was it got popular by social media, and it's the only platform that basically made it a tool to spread awareness about what's happening in Palestine, about the war in Palestine, about many artists who were also hidden and not known before. So I think using the social media can be impactful in a positive way, rather than thinking about it as if it affects you badly in a negative way. And there must be something there that we can do, and if we alter the algorithm that is written to basically control us. Yeah, this is just the social media thing.
For those that are new in the room, my name is Thobile Maphanga, and I'm co-facilitating the Festival Academy Atelier here in Donostia, San Sebastián. Very grateful to be here. Spain is one of my favorite places recently. The food is amazing. But beyond that, the other things that I'm super passionate about, I just looked at our panel, and this makes me super, super happy because outside of myself and Inge, who are facilitating this is a way truer representation of what the world looks like. Only one white man. And I think...
It was almost not here.
Yeah. Who was a last-minute addition. So this is also an interesting thing, but... But, yeah, thank you, Victus. Token. I've been called token everywhere I go. So this is, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. But it's also just been wonderful to listen to the comments that everybody here has had to make, because we tried a preparatory meeting last night, which got very heated, and rightly so. What we're talking about is really, really serious. What is happening in the world is nothing new, at least for some of us, but it is suddenly a moment in time where every single human being is worried and is concerned. And a lot of what I'm hearing today links to each other. The fact that Princess talks about the devil that we know, and I remember I went to a very white boarding school, and this is why I speak this way. And my matrons used to mention that, like, you're always asking for new things, but better the devil that you know. And I think one of the things that maybe is really wonderful for me to have this panel here is that there are solutions, or not even full solutions, but thinking that goes beyond what the system wants us to do, thinking that asks us to go slightly beyond. And such gorgeous things that you say. What kinds of kisses are appropriate for the end of the world? What a beautiful way to think about a really drastic moment in our lives. Choices is some of the things. You know, to be aware of the very little impact, true impact, that the US can actually have upon us as citizens, you know, as human beings. Inge, in her opening, asks us, you know, we say that humans have power, people have power, yet we vote fascism back into the world. So for me, and I'm opening this up to our panel, is in this moment where a lot of us are cultural workers, where, as Inge said, if we have a community of 1,400 plus, which at this moment then grows to 1,450 maybe, do you know what I mean? We're getting closer to 1,500. Cultural workers, our audience is massive, right? And I don't know about most of you sitting in the room, but as somebody who comes from the global south, the thing that Priscila talks about, who comes from the richest country in the world, the most powerful country in the world, yet her government has no funding or grants for the arts. I come from a place where if you choose to be an artist, your parents are asking you a lot of questions, like, why did I waste my money on your education, you know? So we choose these things because we believe in what we're doing. And so for this panel, I want to throw back in this direction is, I mean, Ibrahim, you are curating the most successful festival you've ever done during war. Yes. Do you know what I mean? Like, so there's things that we can do, and what are the things that you guys feel are the little steps that make you hopeful every day to continue to do the work that you do? What are the things that sometimes allow you to wake up in the morning and go, hey, I know that possibly today I could be blown up, but I'm gonna go to work and I'm gonna do it. And you know, we're all getting blown up in various ways. You know, also the representation is not just from the places that we are from, it's what our backgrounds are, our education is, what our sexuality or sexual orientation is, and all that kind of stuff. Every single day, all of us are at risk, but we wake up and we do. So to swing it back, whoever wants to.
Yeah, I come from a background where my family also asks me questions. I mean, they don't know that I work in art.
I
they
also
don't even
lied
know.
about it.
No, I come from a product design from tech background, and then I quit my job and I became an artist, and then life led me to Berlin, and from Berlin I moved to Bethlehem, where the Wonder Cabinet is. And then there, I just found myself. I found that I can create a difference, I can preserve our culture, and I found that there is some need for this place to be there to bring more artists, create more culture, and preserve it, and fight with this tool. So I think it's very important what we are doing there with whether it's Sounds of Places Festival or the projects that we are making and the cultural exchange that we are making with others, bringing them to the Wonder Cabinet and like dealing with all of the occupation difficulties that to bring international artists from outside and through the borders, from 3 borders, you know, you have to cross Jordan and then to cross Israel. And then you have to tell Israel a story that you're going to Israel, you're not going to Palestine, you're not going to the West Bank. You have to prove that they are going there. We have to fake documents. You have to do lots of things. And I was just telling the guys, we had around 16 artists from local to internationals. 12 of them were international artists last year. And every time an artist crosses the borders, I'm with them on the phone and it's like, yeah, okay, do this, say that, until they reach the West Bank. And then I was like, yes, that's it. My job is done before the festival starts. It was okay, khalas, they're all here, bye. I'm leaving. So, yeah, for me, this is just a tool to exist, to preserve the culture, and this is my motive. This is why I wake up every morning excited to go to the Wonder Cabinet.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a tough question. I think about yeah, in the Philippines. Yeah, we were once called the social media capital of the world. And the reason why I think about, yeah, like this project, like seizing the means of seduction, is because we do face like a really strong culture of what many experts call disinformation. And this disinformation, I think, is sometimes amiss with sort of like people's like discontent also with like regimes of like objectivity or fact or science, and how, yeah, even like our current president now, his name is Bongbong Marcos, not very seductive either, also won his presidency through not only like disinformation or lies, but simply like, for example, TikTok videos that make him seem like a handsome man, like a charming man. There was no need to sort of like show a CV for people to sort of like root for this baby dictator. But what motivates me is that it's not, I'm tempted to say not artists, because in many ways artists can be not too creative. We get into layers and layers of abstraction. But what inspires me a lot is, yeah, just last week, is it a new week? No, yeah, it was just last week, a huge union, a very old union of semiconductors in the Philippines. They're called, they're a union from a Netherlands-based semiconductor company called Nexperia, won a victory by getting better wages and having 2 of their dismissed union leaders installed back to their workforce. And I think about how workers everywhere, even in the time of like artificial intelligence, for example, are doing so much of the amazing dream work that's really necessary for us to, yeah, imagine a better world. I think not a lot of cultural producers, for example, are taking the stakes of like, for example, having livable wages, permanent positions for their arts workers and technicians very seriously. And I think this is a problem that will bite us back in the ass, you know, like 5-10 years later, when we think about like, oh, how come we're losing the culture war? And so, yeah, I think about the past legacies of many unions and workers, and you know, even there's like a Hollywood union of writers, I think, that was sort of like trying to reject AI, at least in the sense of like having better wages for them. You know, we can speak endlessly about how much AI helps us, you know, figure out the meanings behind our names, or yeah, making the perfect itinerary for like a trip to Bali or something. But there's a lot of workers behind this technology, and these are people who have aspirations. These are people who need lots of time, who are robbed of time. And it's always, I think, in the margins, and especially of these workers, that we can begin to actually think creatively.
Thanks. A lot of big questions. Maybe one thing to go just a step back and historically talking about sort of the question was, is curation a way of exploring a common humanity? Historically, and it's not an unproblematic history, but festivals like Edinburgh that then served in the European context and Western context as models for the Multi-Arts Festival were explicitly founded on the idea that we'll bring culture from different places so we won't have another war. And there's a whole colonial context to that word I won't go into. It's not all easy listening, but it was explicit. We can call it naive or problematic, but it was stated intent. I forget who is from Edinburgh here. Yes, thank you. And maybe we talk later, but that's certainly what Helsinki Festival was modeled on, and so it would continue. One comment which isn't very constructive, and I don't think it applies to this community, but one thing I'm personally quite skeptical of, or against, I should say, is that we somehow, the claim that artists and curators have sort of exclusive or better access at humanity or shared humanity than others. And that's not, I'm not dissing art or curation. We are all doing it and we find it meaningful. But I think whatever articulation of shared common humanity or a culture of cooperation, it's as much for the non-artists and non-curators to own. In fact, it cannot succeed if it's not owned by a larger community than just the curators and the artists. Plus it then leads to all kinds of things. Who are curators? Who are artists? Who can articulate it? So we can make a better contribution than other parts of society, perhaps, but we don't need to own it, so to speak. Now, to that end, I really believe in the power of networks. So 1,450 people can do remarkable things. But I wonder when it's not another side, but the messages are so blunt and so sort of crushingly clear that to counter them and to resist them, you need to be equally or even more brutally clear. So I'm not sure we can meme our way out of it. And I'm not an expert in memeing, or as you can tell, I haven't been on any meta platforms for over 6 years, but I follow it. I try to understand it for work, and I appreciate the positive uses of it. But I think it requires something that's quite coordinated somehow. But maybe counter to that, I've thought a lot about this in the context of peace mediation and articulating more of a culture of cooperation, which we need, particularly, as I earlier referred to a little bit, our view of security is totally militaristic and hard forces, defense spending. It's flipped very, very quickly if you go to Brussels and in the European context, but everywhere it has shifted, having just come from Pretoria and discussing with people there, that who's going to articulate the culture of cooperation back when we don't believe in the UN anymore, or but general lack of faith in multilateral institutions. Maybe it is the arts festivals, but it needs to be quite somehow coordinated, and then it gets complicated politically and what's in, what's out, and so on. But if it cannot be articulated, certainly it doesn't seem like it's coming from the standard geographical blocks. It's not coming from the African Union or the European Union. I'm here speaking amongst friends, friendier, not off the record, kind of. That was one of we needed to say, right? But I don't think that that's where it's being articulated at the moment. So it's a kind of new combination, and 1,450 people coming, representing all continents. There's an opportunity for it, but it just needs to crush them with clarity, you know, and that's hard.
Before you answer the question, I wanted to add a layer to the conversation because I was struck by a couple of things that were said. On the one hand, the thing that Max said, like, are we complicit? You know, because at a certain point, somewhere in November, I had the feeling like I don't want to make any move at all. Because I feel like every move I make is part of a system I don't agree with. You know, and you want to say, it's been enough. You know, I don't want to take a flight. I don't want to continue any, you know, because as you say, like business as usual kind of confirms the system we are part of. You said, Priscila, like, luckily we are not funded by the government, which I want to add on to this. What are the small things that we can do to think about the informal sector? Because many of the people who are sitting here are from grassroots independent organizations. And when we are part of the formal economy or the formal sector, as we say, we are owned. We are no longer resilient, you know, and you almost say like, we are kind of not part of it. So what are the possibilities of, again, the margins and the cracks that we are operating from with all the challenges that we have? And can we think about that? And there's been a book, I haven't read it yet, which talks about debt. Because also, again, we need resources. And it's a study into 5,000 years of debt. And it talks about the fact that when I get indebted to you and you get indebted to me, we are actually starting a relationship. And it's not like a loan of a bank, but it's like I give you this and you give me that, and it's not completely balanced. You know, so we feel this discomfort of owning something to somebody. And the book further describes this principle as debt is actually a principle that starts creating communities. So when reflecting upon alternative strategies, you know, for resources, for finances, for things, to just include it now in the thinking of the small steps that we can take, and also of this position of the US, which actually was already there before, but is kind of continuing, and how you are going to navigate this at this point.
Yeah, I just want to take one step back in something that Thobile said, that we look like most society, but unfortunately we don't look like the power in society looks like, right? And I think that's one major point, that like we need to look the power in society, not just in government, but in all places need to look like this. And then we can really think and have diverse voices that will advocate to have different source and different ways of thinking and having money. So thinking in the US reality, in all cases specifically, like we are nonprofit, and we are not completely out of the system. We have some sort of money from the government, and the majority of our money actually comes from corporates. So like banks, all the nonprofits, foundations, and some of those foundations are dirty too. So, like, you know, some of those foundations are some of the billionaires who does not want to pay taxes in some way, and they give it to us. Okay. So, if they are using, that's at least they are using a good way, right? But they still billionaires, which for me shouldn't even exist in this world, which is a completely different conversation. But we do have other ways that bank is one of, if you go to the website Summer Stage City Parks Foundation, Capital One. So Capital One is the bank who gave us $1 million which is like a good portion of our budget, to be funding the festival. So that's a partnership that is strong. It is not completely out of the system, and also take time and take like relationships. And I think those kind of relationships are also created in a sense of like, you know, breaking the bubble that you live, and with those diverse voices. So you can start having people in power that are not just white, old, male. We all love you too, okay? But we need more, you know, we need more diversity in all those places, and getting to the people who are in all the levels, that understanding the need of society in all levels. So we have a lot of members or some stage who pay fees, and they have like some privilege in different ways. We have, of course, board members. We have a group of people who financially support the festival too, who will believe in our mission and believe what we do. So there are a lot of different steps, and we have a specific, which is a luxury, we have a specific department who's just responsible to raise money. So that department can think, and they are divided between the government ones. Because when we think about the government, it's not just, we are not just thinking about the National Foundation for the Arts, or those big level federal ones. US is really split at federal, state, and city. So you really need to go through all those three levels and see what are the ways they can get, like the city council, they have budget there, right? So how you go to the city councils and see ways that they can support the specific concert that we are doing in the Bronx, because they believe that's important for the Bronx community. So we're really trying to find a lot of different sources of like how we can get a big donor that loves Latin music. Okay, so we do a lot of Latin music. Let's talk. Or someone from South Asian. So like there are really targeted thoughts on how we can address the funding for that reality, and that give us some level of flexibility of, no, we just lost like $100,000 from the government because they just cut it a big, but they are one of the main grants from the National Foundation that they always do in some stage, always get it, and they just cut it the grants, and they changed the whole thing about the grant, which I will not go in details, and fortunately, we are sustainable financially, and we have all the ways to make that up. But if you will, a smaller festival, that would be it. Like losing like $100,000 for like a festival, it's a lot of things. So we have been thinking creative, and of course, when I say we, I'm not part of the finance team, but like how the curation thinking on that, and how all curation reflects this. So we are always like in conversation of like how we can. All curation always thinking the diversity of the city, and the money that we are receiving also hopes to get the same reflection on that, on the different sources that we have in the city and beyond the city too. So I don't know if I respond to your question, but another thing that I wanted to say is that when you think, we always talk about US as an empire. For me who lives there, girl, for reality for those who live there, it's not like this. Absolutely not. It's just like US is an empire to scare the others, right? It's like this big bully guy, which you can even picture who's that. But in reality, it is not feeding their own communities, not feeding their own population. Like, I pay 30% in taxes for my paycheck, which look, ooh, it's painful. And it does not go back to us. So that you go to Central Park not as much, but you walk like around Times Square, right? The big place that has a lot of those LED screens, and that a lot of people live in the streets. The inequality in the US is one of the biggest. In New York City, oh my God. I would not even get into details into this. So like, we are talking about the biggest empire in the world that does not make its own country as an empire. It's just like how they distribute the vision of how others perceive them. But it's not really how you live the US reality.
Yo. Yo is a word that we need to add in the dictionary. It's a. I think in South Africa, if a person says yo, they've said a lot of things. So it's hectic but I want to say that the word funding gives me anxiety And I think the kind of work that I'm doing, what I'm calling festivals of the oppressed, runs on little to no funding. The oppressed that I'm working with in the market, for example, when we're doing climate change work, these are everyday traders. They're not trained in theater, but they need to be paid for the performances of the everyday that they engage in that space. So riding on existing projects has been helpful for me, at least in the work that I'm doing. I know there are people, at least where I come from in Zimbabwe, who started, Philip, I'm not talking about you, but I know other people who've started festivals as a business because they want to attract funding, because the economy is down, there are no jobs. So if I start a festival, then I can attract funding and that's my business. So obviously that business model is based on funding. So if I say what I'm going to say, they would probably beat me up. But I think what the opportunity that comes with the shrinking of the funding, it's not just the states that just ceased funding. I know in South Africa we just got terminated from a lot of funding from the states, but also even philanthropists who usually give us money, which is unattached because they believe in the work we do and in changing and transforming societies. The opportunity that comes with that dryness is that we'll start thinking creatively about how we can fund, how we can resource our work creatively and thinking about how we can stop twerking for the funders. Because when you get the money, obviously you're gonna twerk according to the funder. Half the time that work is limited within what the funder wants you to do. And I think it's an opportunity for us to stop twerking, and I think this is a big opportunity for us as artists. I think funding comes with taming. You are tamed insofar as what you can say, insofar as the work that you create. So I think there is an opportunity there to liberate our art forms so that they begin to tell stories that we want to tell in the world. So I think that's an opportunity, and I know it's sad to say it's an opportunity because we also want to survive. We are here because somebody funded the project somewhere, somehow. But I think it's an opportunity for us to think about networking. Maybe Philip, I'm gonna use you as an example because you're my countryman. How do you connect with Marco here and another person and Lorenzo to put together resources to have festivals together, like a stock fair? We have something in South Africa called stock fair. You know, it's a system where people borrow each other money. Like say this month we're giving it to Benjamin. All of us, 2, 4, 6, 7 of us will give Benjamin 10 Rand each this month. And you do what you do. Next month we give Thobile and we do what we do. And that's how most of the people have been able to survive, because if you get, I don't know how much you can get from 10 people, say you get 1,000 Rand, then you can do something substantial with it and then we go around. So it's putting together resources to probably have one massive festival at a time, which then is more meaningful. I think the word impact, we'll touch it later, but impact is also very problematic because what metrics are we using? What impacts, and usually we use one model of impact to say we want to quantify. Some of the impact is not quantifiable, because sometimes people will not say, after the diaphoria, they will not come and raise hands and say, you changed my life, you transformed. There are instances where people like Toby will have another opportunity to come and say, this transformed my life. But some are not going to come, Inge, and your funders will ask you to say, quantify the effect. I cannot quantify how joyful and happy I am because feelings are hard to quantify. But the transformation is there in seeing all these amazing faces doing the work under harsh circumstances, and I might want to keep doing the work because of that. So yeah, metrics and impact, they become a problem there.
Thank you, Princess. You bring up, or you remind me of one of my favorite essays. I don't know how many people know Ngugi wa Thiong'o. He is a Kenyan scholar and writer, and he wrote an essay called Enactments of Power, and he basically discusses the power of performance versus the performance of power, and this is what I think you're talking about, where, of course, governments and states do what they do, grandstand like the lovely T in your country, the US, would love us to all focus on. But also just to clarify that I didn't call the US the greatest empire, but power, as in power, it's seen as a mega power in the world, right? And for me, that often raises questions of what is power? And Marco mentioned something about that this responsibility doesn't lie in just the artists or curators. I wasn't intending to say that, but I truly believe in soft power. I truly believe that my existence is because my people and I have always lived in the margins. And so when I say this representation, because you also mentioned it, Priscilla, that yes, this is a better representation of the world, but for me this is a better representation of power also, because in this moment, it is the countries that have always thought themselves very powerful, the ones that have thought they've always been very clear about what their mandates are, what they stand for, that are currently sitting in a moment of distress, deep, deep distress. I cannot tell you how many European friends are wanting to flee at this moment, which is an interesting thing for us who have to get visas in order to enter here, because there's an assumption that we want to be here and to take from you. So we don't have a lot of time.
We can maybe also...
Can I ask one more question? And it's a rhetorical question. It's a rhetorical question to everybody. Marcus spoke about being brutally clear, that our messaging has to be brutally clear, because in this current moment, it is brutally clear what is happening and how the world is turning against us. And my question is, have we not been brutally clear? And I think a lot of people who are coming from the global south know exactly what I mean. I think Ibrahim, who's sitting right next to me, I think people who are sitting currently who are coming from Ukraine understand what it is. There's nobody here from Sudan, there's nobody here from Mozambique, there's somebody here from the DRC, but I think we've been brutally clear. So my questions are, who is speaking? Who is listening? How are we listening? And to whom should we be saying this to? And I think that is why I posed the question that I posed, is as people who are sitting here, people who have soft power, people whose budgets are being cut and are feeling a little bit, who are we speaking to? How do we curate? I saw a very wonderful performance that some of you might have seen, Mothers, A Song for Wartime, by Polish director Marta Gonika. Yeah, and I was interested in the response of the festival I was at. It blew my mind. It was simple, not as in simple, you know, stupid, but as in, it was dynamic, but very, very, yeah, stripped down, clear. Their message was brutally clear. And the responses that I felt I got was, my very big theater and my very big festival, it's not really for our audience. So what is for our audiences? Yeah? I come from a country where one of my favorite choreographers, Mamela Nyamza, is stealing the world at the moment with a performance that I absolutely love. I've watched it 8 times in less than a year and a half. And it speaks back to the classics, what is art, and who has the right to do what on stage. And people love it because at the end, after they've listened to the dying swan repeat over and over and over for about 30 minutes and get super frustrated by your own making of what classical art is, it ends up being a bunch of ballerinas who take off their shoes and they stamp, they gita on stage is what we call it, and they sing songs. And you are all enamored by the rhythmic beauty of what African artists can do. But you have no idea what those songs mean. You have no idea what those dancers are saying. So when we say brutally clear, what do we mean? I don't know if you want to say one last thing. We can open it up to the audience.
I want to ask a quick question also to the audience. I like the idea of being brutally clear, but I want us to think about what opportunities lie in being brutally deceptive and strategically deceptive. Because I think it's a strategy to be deceptive deliberately because you want to survive and for the cause of the work. So what opportunities lie in being deceptive? Because, I mean, it's a moral thing, but we've been deceived as well. So how do we make use of it?
So the tables have turned. The questions are going that way now. So who wants to take it? Is there, no, seriously, is there a response or a feedback or a question from the room? Yes.
I'm Chris. I'm from Texas in the United States. And I have actually, I'm writing an National Endowment for the Arts application right now with these new guidelines that you were talking about. And I'm probably going to use AI to make up an application that has very little to do with my actual festival, because we're a queer trans experimental performance festival that our country does not want to fund. So didactically, like, I think that that is a really rich place. Like, what do you have to say about your festival to who in order to make it happen? And am I morally obligated to be honest to a government that I don't believe in anymore?
I just want to say that in terms of governments, just one tiny thing. In terms of governments, we are paying there, right? So it's all money. So in terms of government, I feel if we are faking take a little words there, it's still all money. So we are funding everything that they are putting there. So that one, I don't feel bad at all. Corporations and all the other ones, that is a whole different conversation. But for government money, we pay taxes every month to do so. So that one, yes, we are also doing the same. Like, I'll take DEI words for all of that. Such a bullshit. But it's like, it's all money. So we need to take it there.
I have a question. I think in the arts, we're all very used to share. There is like a common humanity, you know, among us about race and queer people, and we're open and liberal and inclusive. So my question for you is, what is our job in including everyone in our spaces, including people that do not think like us? I don't know if you have thoughts about that. It's something that I struggle with at my institution. And how do we make sure that truly everyone is welcome?
Okay. You made me think of a question, and I just wanted to say to the speaker who went first that you have no moral obligation to be truthful to the powers that be that have lied, and so I think deception works best in your case. To not even mention the word trans, not because you're invisibilizing, but you're being strategic about what will keep the work going outside funding. Your government doesn't recognize that transgender and queer people are people in the first place. So it's not just about the money, but it's also the humanity of the players in that festival. So we can be deceptive. And with this one, I don't know if it's possible to be completely inclusive, because you can see that with this panel, there's effort to be inclusive, but somebody might be saying, why do we have 3 ladies or 4 or whatever? So there's always a problem with that. But I think the best thing is to make the space to open up the space to truth-telling or multiple truths, to have space for that, where if people are uncomfortable or feel unseen, then they can be able to speak to that. We don't always have to explain. Sometimes there are reasons why, for example, we can't say, Toby and I cannot be saying, why is it, or why do we have 3 black women and we are full of whatever? Because there are reasons why, and there are justifications as to why a particular program will probably have more people who are maybe coming from Latin America, also because of geography, funding, and other variables. But I think opening up space where people can be allowed to express freely will also help in the inclusivity aspect of it. But we also don't want to be politically correct and try and think that we can do so much. We can try, but we can only do so much.
Hello. Yeah, so I think with the question of inclusivity, right now I'm doing projects with sort of launching trying out like open social media. So if you've heard of stuff like Mastodon, Blue Sky, etc. And in this sort of aspiration, I think a lot about how in our discussions, we've sort of tried to think through what inclusivity means, especially when you're building a community in alternative social media. I'm now like super done with like thinking of, I mean, at least I try to distinguish, make the important distinction between inclusivity and like universality. I no longer aspire for the universal, because when we try to aspire for universal, we already live in an increasingly homogenous world. We're speaking in, a colonial language like English. Like a lot of Filipinos, our government is literally trying to wipe out Filipino language education to make room for the English language starting grade school. And so this is kind of like what I'd like to be up against, where there's a lot of difference, and I think there's a lot of respectfulness in that difference that could be made. And there's a lot of real intimate communities that could be produced from understanding that we can live in a world where not everything is sort of like the same, or like there's no aspiration to be the same in many ways, but you can sort of like, build codes of conduct where you're able to express one another and decide what commonalities are useful for the goals that you're trying to follow.
I just want to add one thing, that I think you are like in a major organization in New York. So for me, it's again to the question of diverse leadership, the importance of having diverse leadership. They understand that different cultures will have different ways of like show themselves. Right, when we are talking ballroom and in New York scene, like the way of dance that for traditional dance might be like, oh, right? Like, so how you really respect that community and what they do and what they value, we would respect, but how who's here will understand that that is super important for the community, and that there is a community that value this, and that's the community that we want to achieve. So like it's a challenge. It's a challenge that I see in my own place too, but how we can make sure that to make clear, and things like I have a boss that really try to say that who we serve is not exactly what the board member looks like, is how New York City looks like. So like how we can ensure that like what we do, and because we are nonprofit, we can also use that as a mission driven. We are not making money out of none of this. We are serving the community, and how to serve the community really need to go through like breaking some barriers of what culture is, and like what is the mainstream of culture, and what are the other different cultures that are there based on those identities. It is definitely, it's not really a response, it's just a reflection that I also like need to be thinking all the time, and like making sure that we give the space, because a lot of times like we have gender balance goals inside the organization, we have like BIPOC balance goals inside the organization. We really like aim this, and we always like go beyond that. But like how we ensure that like when we book like a salsa band and it's predominantly like male genre, like how we make sure that how you find that balance, right? So you a lot of times need to go through different like source to find those groups and those diversity, because they were not even able to break to the mainstream of agents and to the mainstream to get it to the information. So you need to go a little bit deeper, and then have like a bigger conversation, more like philosophical conversation with your organization, why you do that and what is the importance to do. So it's more a reflection.
I think, Marta, you had a question still also. So, Marco, I know you want to respond, but maybe we can take the question and kind of try to respond
I definitely don't want the
it.
Finnish guy to be the last comment on the panel. Seriously,
I think let's be realistic. We will maybe go, like everybody can have maybe a last word.
Then
I think this will be the last question that we take. And also I wanted to challenge a bit the assumption that we think, that we say like, why are people not listening? Maybe they are listening. And maybe we need to, you know, and this is the really harsh reality, that they really don't agree or care. And that it's also something we need to take along in our thinking. Marta, shoot, you're the last.
Thank you. Well, I'm, like, it's of course interesting and relevant, and it's the moment to talk about a lot about the US and what's happening over there, and the impact, the global impact, the geopolitical impact. But I also would like to hear you all talking about the role, aka responsibility of Europe, because when I see that, like, okay, what's going on, no? Like, okay, we talk so much about the US, and then what's happening in Europe, no? What is the position? What's going on? I'm sure that all your regions have bond to Europe in one way or the other. So I would like, also because we are here right now in this territory, so to reflect about the role or responsibility of Europe, also in our work and in our relationships and in our future, maybe. I mean, to me, it would be interesting to hear about it. And also, of course, this is amazing what is happening here in terms of representation and diversity. But also, if we want to be like clear, what was the expression you used about? Yeah, exactly. And now that you brought up Mamela's name, because it's also a friend of mine and artist that I really admire, and talking about the relationship to Europe, like Mamela's, it's been touring Europe, like, with a great success. And I was having a conversation with a friend of mine that is European and also very talented, but talking about Mamela's case, and I got a very harsh comment from a person that I consider like a liberal, progressive, sensitive, also an artist, and this person made a comment about Mamela that she's just having this success because she's gay and black, from a person that is also gay. And I was like, okay, wow, I was very impressed, but this is a reality also, no? And how real is inclusion? Like, how real is diversity? Or is something that is coming as a facade? How do you say facade in English? Facade. But when you look inside the structures and inside the what's the real thing? No, where are we for real in terms of inclusion and diversity? Yeah, that's my question.
Okay, Marco. Europe. He doesn't want to respond anymore.
No,
I think anyway it's good. No, yeah, I think it's good that everybody kind of. This is the start, you know, of these 7 days. So we will have 7 days to discuss all these questions. But it's good that we hear everybody's voice for a moment. So I will shut up and you just.
Okay, I will try and then clap some way. First of all, really good challenges and questions and sort of clarifications. I was probably not clear, and I will try to be. When I talked about being brutally clear, I specifically meant a culture where, on a geopolitical level, certain countries are sort of propagating a behavior where it is a very sort of might makes right kind of culture where, if I was watching an old Noam Chomsky interview from like 40 years ago or something, where he said that if we looked and taught our children, like, go to the sort of park, and if you see another kid with a candy and you want it, just take it. You know, it's Kate first, if Kate was the name of the kid. We'd call this behavior pathological, right? Yet now we have this kind of behavior. So I was talking about a reaction to that specific thing and an erosion of our joint multilateral institutions and the idea that we exist to cooperate so that we can lift everyone, which has its own problems as an idea. But how do we maintain that value and that culture of cooperation? It wasn't specifically about representation of this or that majority or minority in the arts or things like that. That's another important question, but that's not what I was talking about. I'm personally not worried about art and culture. Art has historically, in all the regions, it has done particularly well in retrospect in periods when there's such good material, you know? And I don't say that, I know we're struggling with money, but I'm not worried about art. I am worried about the international community very quickly shifting to a new normal. That's the way it is, you know. We need to counter with that and that. And my question was, does art have a role in that? The very first question, which was hard, is why do people vote in these people? That you asked that, Inge, at the beginning. And if I may paraphrase, you referred to it at lunch. We were speaking, and you said, at the immigration, I don't want an apology from the colonialists. I want them to see me as a human, and that you referred to just now. And that, I think, it's hard to do like broad brush history, but that's what we're talking about. Large swaths of the population don't feel like they are being heard or seen as human. And then very populist, basically the elite to which in some different dimensions we belong to have failed to hear that community. And then it's a response to that. And I don't know what role generally we can have. It's not like people are naive and they believe that the current person they voted into power is looking after their interests better. It's just that it's better than the other shit, which was talking values and wasn't doing anything. I'm sorry, that's quite crude, but I think it's related to this being seen as a human and being heard. And that's, I think, the most important thing.
Yeah.
Hello. That's a tough question. Just looking at the question, yeah, how do you solve a problem like Europe? I lived here the past 2 years. Everywhere I was doing this Erasmus Mundus program, and definitely so I come from the Philippines. One of the biggest culture shocks for me was precisely the amount of funding that Europe had. And what I felt was definitely different. You know, you see an exhibition about decolonizing the toilet, and like it's not something that's the most interesting thing to see. And I look back at my country in the Philippines where there's no working art system, but then, you know, there's so much room for imagination. Where was I going with that? Decolonizing the toilet.
To Ibrahim.
You were laughing very hard, I think.
It's great to hear everybody's voice. Shortly, there's some nervousness happening in the door already. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of things to discuss and to answer. I don't think I can answer them now, but there is a big discussion which should go towards the funding issue, especially that I think in the art world, we got so dependent on the funding and funders, and this controlled how art is being done. I think the solution is to create systems to sustain art internally and create like an internal economy within our art societies. That's it.
Okay. Yes, I'm from Brazil, and Brazil was colonized by Portugal. So I do feel Europe has like a big what's the right word? A big role in making, as a colonizer who destroyed cultures, who enforced their own thoughts and way of being in so many countries, Brazil is just one of them, that we must to request them to do something about it, right? Like if in Brazil there are a lot of discussions, and like now Portugal is not considered the biggest and the most important here in Europe, that but it's still like it plays a role in how they can support the other countries, especially those who they colonize. That's a big like discussion around at least Brazil and US. And I know this is no Brazil, yes, Brazil, Portugal, but it's also like a discussion that we can go to Spain, right? In terms of so many countries that was colonized by Spain, and also England, and like in how they are doing their role, like the now they think that like, oh, the Africans want to come here. You went to the country first. What? You went there. So like now you are doing more than your obligation to kind of, and you destroy the country, you destroy the cultures, and they are trying to just like survive, not just survive is not the right word, they were trying to thrive, and you gave them that language that you obligated them to speak. So like now you must do something about it. So I think Europe has like a big responsibility with that I don't know how they're seeing. So like social reparation. And now there is even a discussion about cultural reparation. And like in cultural reparation is related with funding, like how funding can be sourced in terms of the culture. Not that I want a Portugal culture, you are fine, I'm good with my Brazilian culture, but like how they can source some of the culture there in Brazil and how we can like exchange things. I think that has been one of the big discussion about Europe, and at least in my field. And just to close, because now we are almost done, I think in terms of like passion, I'm passionate about the moments that arts will be seen as important in society and as valued. And okay, I'll phrase this in a different way. Like when we don't have issues of housing, of food, like such a basic need that we don't need to think the arts is less valued than. Like we are all equal, and we have a lot of steps to get there, but that's kind of the word that I dream with.
Thank you. So when I started, I said to Inge, we have not lost. We are being challenged to rethink the ways we do our art, but also our festivals. Like, what are the premises of our festivals? Which bodies do we invite? Which people do we invite to our festivals? How do we perpetuate systems of oppression or elitist frames with the people that we invite? The kind of art that we give space to. So we need to think about that more, and also to shift our own ways and in our own festival, make the little changes. And then with Europe, the question of Europe, I think, for me, I think Europe needs to, I think there is a large cross-section of European countries, or at least with the people that I won't use Europe as a homogenous group, but I think there are countries that are making effort to revise their stance, revise their position, and revise how they perceive other people. And I think they should continue on that trajectory, because our refusal to acknowledge the revisions that are being done by other European countries is also to say, then the work we are doing in the global south is not reaping any kind of harvest or any effect, because there is that work that's happening where we are calling on Europe to say, and other countries to say, you've colonized us, you need to rethink, you need to see us as human. There are others who are actually seeing us as human, and we need to acknowledge those wins, right? And then encourage that they keep going with that trajectory. And lastly, I think with inclusivity, we also want to run away from performing inclusivity, because sometimes we accessorize bodies. You're black, queer, you fit the script, so you come to the festival and just become an accessory. And there's a lot of tokenism that comes with that, where you think you're participating, but you're just being part of a tokenistic system. You're not really actually participating. So, like I said, opening up space for truth. When your friend said she's making it because she's black and queer, they are nodding to the fact that black and queer bodies have been accessorized in so many programs, especially because of leftist propaganda, where they wanted particular bodies to take the stage because that's where the money was going. Soon enough, we will be asked, are you queer? And I'll say yes, and they say, Princess is not coming to this program because right now the money is not for the queers. So it's also how bodies are accessorized and inclusivity is performed and not necessarily an actual thing. So we need to be also very conscious of that.
Great. Thobile, last word, and I think we need to run.
I don't have I don't have a last word prepared, but I do, I think the fact that today there's 47 people in this room and not one of the people that applied for a visa got rejected is what Europe is doing, or at least Spain is doing. At least Spain is doing. And as a last, I think what Princess also says about like acknowledging the places that are and acknowledging that not everybody is their country, because I think in this conversation that's what it's become. We're not, please don't feel vilified, please don't feel bad. I think we're having very, very massive conversations that are necessary but are not personal. I hope that makes sense.
No, and I think it comes back to the human being. Like the conversation we had was like, who do you want to be? Whatever you are surrounded with, what will make you proud in the end of the day. So I think this is also part of it.